Happy June and welcome into another edition of Gold and Black Radio. I'm your host, Derek Schultz. Everybody is out of school at this point. We are past Memorial Day. We are past the month of May, and we are into the summer. I know summer doesn't technically start until whatever it is, June 21st, but this is very much summer right now. Certainly up in West Lafayette, where campus is noticeably quieter than it usually is in the fall and spring. But as always, the news cycle never really stops. And for football, it'll be back at it and back to the grind and lifting and workouts and everything else. It never stops for them either. Neither does recruiting. As we close the book on 2025, the book on 2026 is still very much open. So we're going to talk to Tom Dienhart about all of that, including the upcoming schedule for the Boilermakers in the fall, as those kick times have, many of them have now been announced. But first, a shout out to our great Gold and Black sponsors that make Gold and Black Radio possible every single Tuesday. That list includes Purdue Federal Credit Union, a proud partner of Purdue Athletics and the official credit card for Purdue fans. Boiler up. East End Grill and Ripple & Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street, the perfect place for your next event. The Whitaker Inn, this Midwestern oasis, perfect for a relaxing staycation or a weekend getaway. Escape from the ordinary at the Whitaker Inn. Sand Valley Resort, where tee times for the 2025 golf season are now available. Using their online booking platform, it's easier than ever to find availability and experience golf as it was meant to be. Conveniently located in the breathtaking dunes of central Wisconsin, Sand Valley offers a collection of award-winning courses designed by world-renowned architects that are suitable for all skill levels. Visit sandvalley.com and book your tee times online today. And finally, the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research, which has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Purdue brings together world-class Boilermaker scientists from all across the university, conducting cutting-edge research that uncovers new ways to prevent, diagnose, and treat cancer. With your support, cancer research saves lives. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. Let's bring on goldenblack.com football writer and expert Tom Dienhart, who joins us as he usually does on this show. And as I mentioned, Tom, while the book is pretty much closed, at least on scholarship players for 2025, it's very much open as far as 2026 is concerned, and we're seeing commitments start to come in. We talked about a new one last week, and we've got another new one to talk about today. In fact, a kid that you just talked to in Chemistry Young, a Florida wide receiver who has an impressive offer list: Miami, Florida State, a couple of Big Ten schools offered him alongside Purdue. What can you tell us about him and potentially how he fits on this Purdue team?
Yeah, good young man. Always fun to try to catch up with these guys, Derek, in the wake of their commitment. He's the 8th commit in the class of 2026 for Purdue. A first wide receiver, goes to a private school, Cardinal Mooney High in the Tampa area. And he has one Boilermaker connection, Derek. The wide receivers coach, his coach at Cardinal Mooney, is a former Boilermaker, Michael Hawthorne, who played cornerback at Purdue in the late 90s on some really good teams, and played in the NFL for about 6 years. So, yeah, we're seeing some momentum, Derek. Young just took an OB this last weekend. They had a whole raft of players here. I expect, Derek, I think they got one other commitment last weekend. Maybe we'll find out about it this week if the kid announces that and goes public. And, of course, Derek, June 3rd, tomorrow, is the first of 3 camps in June for Purdue. So they're going to have a lot of players on campus here the next few days as well. So they'll start evaluating, probably mostly, Derek, 2027 kids. So as you said at the top, recruiting never ends for these coaches.
You mentioned Hawthorne, an alumnus. Did he tip off the Purdue staff to this, or was this something, the recruiting world is much smaller than it used to be, Tom. You've been around this game for a long time, but that's kind of the way that it used to work, especially for prospects that were way out of state.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't followed up on that. It's a good question. I'll have to reach out to Michael Hawthorne. Chemistry told me that he'd been recruited by Purdue for a long time. So obviously that goes back to the former staff. So there was some, at least a school relationship there between the two. So yeah, I'll have to reach out and see if Michael or ask Young himself if Hawthorne played a role in tailing off the Boilermakers. Nonetheless, it looks like they got him a promising receiver. And like I said, the first wideout in this 2026 class.
Yeah, and I hope he makes it to campus simply because then we can name him to the all-unique name team, right? Chemistry. That's a great one. And it's with a K and a couple of I's in there as well. It's a unique name and a unique spelling as well. So congratulations to him, and I hope it pans out for him with Purdue. Speaking of receiver, and I think this is high on every team's list, but from your conversations with the staff, Tom, how big of a deal is offensive playmakers at the skill positions for this new staff? Because, man, that's really been lacking since the last group of Jeff Brom talent moved on.
It's huge. I talked to one staffer sometime during spring football, and they said the offense was really handicapped last year by an inability of wide receivers to stretch the field. So that allowed most of the defenses just to play zone coverage. It was impossible to get behind defenses because they did not respect the speed of the pretty wide receivers. They made a concerted effort to try to get faster. We'll see if that plays out on the field here with these portal transfers they brought in. But again, huge. You have to be able to make defenses respect your speed. You have to make them at least fear the ability to maybe get beat deep as well. As you know, being a football fan, that's going to open up the rest of the field for you to run the football, stretch those defenses out a little bit. So you're right. You can never underestimate the need for playmakers really everywhere, Derek, but particularly a wide receiver to really augment your offense.
Looking to the schedule, the kick times for 2025 are coming in, and we're going to get another bucket night game after getting one last year in Bloomington. Hopefully this time the result goes slightly differently than it did for Purdue on the last night game around. Tom, I guess you kind of have to do what TV wants, right? So if NBC says, hey, we want the game at this time, then you say, okay, great. Give me the check. I am kind of old guy, get off my lawn with the amount of night games. I'm not necessarily against the bucket game being a night game because I've also been in those stadiums when it's been a noon game and there's been like 10,000 people there. Mm-hmm. So, I know that the atmosphere, generally speaking, is better for a night game, but just the amount of primetime games now where it feels like half the schedule is night games for a sport, to me, that needs to be played primarily on Saturday afternoon. I don't know. Am I old guy get off my lawn about that?
You're preaching the choir, Derek Schultz. I'm with you, but we probably are in the minority. We are the old guy with our fist clenched,
sure,
screaming at the clouds. I'm wishing it was 1985. You're wishing it was probably 2005, right? I wish every game kicked off at 1 o'clock or noon. But you're right. We know the audiences are always greater for prime time, and like you said, television calls the shots here. They tell people when they're going to kick off, and the schools say yes. And you're right, the schedule, at least a few of these times were released. The bucket game. Derek, I think you were on the sideline last year, weren't you?
I was.
Bloomington freezing your rear end off.
Hopefully, it was for sure.
We'll see from there again. Hopefully the weather won't be quite as chilly. Like you said, the outcome will be better for the Boilermakers. But right now, Southern Illinois, the second game of the year, a home game on September 6th. 7:30 on BTN. That ought to be a fun game, you'd hope, for Purdue. And then the Minnesota game, Derek, in Minneapolis on the 11th of October is going to be 7 or 7:30. Then you talked about the bucket game. Of course, a Friday night, Black Friday. You know what? It'll be interesting to see where each of these programs is at once we get to that point, right? You'd think there's not going to be a lot on television that night, football-wise. So Purdue could have a pretty sizable audience to watch them on the national network and NBC. So that could be good or bad depending on how you play. Very unique, Derek. As you probably saw, I tweeted out shortly after this was announced that Purdue and Indiana played one other time on a Friday night. That was way back in 1995 in Bloomington when the Boilermakers won, I believe, 51-16. And Mike Allstott ran for almost 300 yards. I'm not sure how old you were in 1995. Were you born in 1995?
Oh, yeah. I was 12, so I'm not that old, or that young, I guess I should say. But I do remember that. I do have a funny, I know that I'll be warmer for the bucket game this year because my wife and I won a school auction at my son's school with a couple of other parent couples, and we're going to be in Mexico that week. Really? So I'm pretty sure that we're going to be warmer than I was on the bucket game last year, I should say.
Oh, yeah. It ought to be a lot of fun. Like I said, a unique game at night, the bucket. And like I said, I'm like everybody, I'm going to be fascinated to see what Purdue's record is. And if they have anything at stake besides the bucket going into that ball game.
Yeah, and let's talk about that because a lot of people are circling the middle portion of the schedule, and I understand why. The Minnesota Northwestern Rutgers stretch. Yeah. I would get why you would look at that and say, okay, oh boy, like this is where the season make or break. But honestly, Tom, I'm pretty fascinated by the USC Notre Dame Illinois stretch because if they could somehow find a way to steal one of those games, then I think, this Hail Mary shot at bowl eligibility actually could be on the table. And that's coming off of weeks 1 and 2, which I think we would agree are must-win games, right? So if you find a way to be 3-2 entering that stretch, I think you might have somewhat of a puncher's chance of getting to 6, even though I know that's a very high bar and probably an unfair one for this team in year one with Barry Odom.
You make good points, Derek. First 4 games, Ball State, Southern Illinois, USC at home. You talked about the first 2. We already know Vegas has Purdue, I think it's a 16-point favorite against Ball State. The USC game's interesting. We know the name brand USC and the history of the Trojans and what that helmet stands for and the tradition, but we all know this isn't the USC that we grew up watching. My point being is maybe Purdue's got a shot to knock off USC, more so than the next week at Notre Dame. And then you have the off week after they play the Irish to catch their breath. Then Illinois comes to West Lafayette. So who knows? You're right. I think if Purdue could somehow, Derek, start 3-1, have an off week, you need 3 more wins to get to bowl eligibility. You start squinting your eyes and look at the schedule. You said Illinois, at Minnesota, at Northwestern, Rutgers. Heck, Derek, maybe they can get to 6 wins. Who knows against Indiana at home too, right? So yeah, if you really want to put on those black and gold colored glasses and get super optimistic, you may be able to squint out 6 wins there.
I mean, I think most of us would take 4 and 8. So even talking about bowl eligibility, seems to be like we're approaching this. I don't want people to listen to this podcast and think, well, Derek and Tom on GBR were saying that, hey, like this should be a bowl. No one's saying that. No one's saying that this should be a bowl team. I'm just saying, I think that's a good way to put it, Tom. If you win one of those 3 games and USC taking the trip here, like if that game's in LA, then I'd probably approach it a little bit differently. That's been a wonky thing, this whole Pac-12, now Big Ten teams and making the trip and going back and forth. And then the fact that you get the Cannon game at home, which has been a weird series. I mean, look at last year. That was a weird game, right? That's where, if I'm looking for reasons to be optimistic, that's where you said it. You squint really hard and you think, okay, maybe I can see this here. But again, that's we were all admitting that is an extreme long shot, but just something to consider with this schedule. I do think that this schedule plays on paper with where we sit today in the first week of June much more favorably than remember last year's schedule we were looking at. We were like, oh my God, where are the wins even going to come from? And that's before the disastrous 2024 season played out. So I do think that at the very least helps a little bit. Let's talk about, sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Just Derek, the back at Northwestern, Rutgers for homecoming.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Wins, they got to be right.
Yeah, you got to, I mean, really, you have to have all 3 of those. You probably have to go and beat Minnesota as well. If we're going to talk about them getting to 6, it's hard to see the path there if they don't win all 3 of those games.
Yeah.
I know you had to write some position group battles, and it must have been difficult to write one for corner because in order to preview something, we should have some semblance of an idea of what it's going to look like. I know that we know the names, and you've seen these guys in shorts, but how difficult was that to do considering, I mean, you talk about upheaval. That whole thing was ripped up, thrown away, and started anew.
Yeah, that's most of the roster, right? The secondary in particular was really torn asunder, the safeties and cornerbacks. I honestly, Derek, I've got no earthly idea what to expect from about every unit on this team. We did see some of these guys in the spring, but then they went out and brought in 29 more portal guys. So, again, just a lot of upheaval, a lot of chemistry still has to be developed, and just a lot of great unknowns. And I had some staffers tell me even in the spring they had no idea what their secondary was like because the quarterbacks couldn't really test them. So the secondary may be the biggest unknown on this entire roster for me. And how it develops, I don't know, but they do have some veteran players back there. And you got to think they're going to be tested early by a lot of people. Of course, a big key, Derek, to any secondary is going to be the pass rush. What type of heat are these guys bringing? It'll be interesting to see. I think a guy like C.J. Madden could be a real difference maker. I think he's going to have to be a difference maker for Purdue off the edge. His second year in West Lafayette. Trey Smith from Illinois. And they got a lot of portal guys in here as well. So that's going to be key, too, is how quickly they can develop some pass rushers to help out that secondary that's still developing.
Dienhart, send a message after the beep.
That's a throwback there, a landline and an answering machine. That's good that our listeners at home get to.
Can you believe it?
Here's some vintage answering machine there.
It's a landline, Derek Schultz. I don't want to tell you this, but downstairs there's a rotary phone.
Really? Oh, wow. You wonder how many players on Purdue's roster would actually be able to operate a rotary phone just because it's been so. I mean, I can't remember the last time I dialed. I was probably 10 years old the last time that I dialed one back in the 90s.
Anticipation, putting your finger in the dial. I tell you what, Derek, I'll take a picture of it this week and I'll tweet it out and I'll tag you.
Perfect. Yeah, let's just do that. When we release this episode on socials, let's just have the Tom Dienhart family heirloom rotary phone in the picture so everybody can see it. Talking about just defensively, and even with all of the changes, a lot of people are asking, okay, how much can they improve? And the issue is trying to forecast improvement when we haven't seen these guys in action largely, or when we have seen them, obviously they haven't played together because this guy's from UNLV and this guy's from FIU and this guy's from, whatever else. But schematically, Tom, is there just going to be natural improvement because the scheme just frankly was just so bad last year, really on both sides of the ball, but especially defensively?
Yeah, defensively, that scheme, I think, was widely criticized and critiqued, and just it's ineffective. I mean, statistically, Derek, I think it was the worst defense in school history. It finished last in the Big Ten in scoring, total defense, rush defense, pass defense, last in turnovers forced. I think they only forced 5 turnovers all last year, if you can believe it. So there's only one way to go up, and it begins with the scheme like you talked about. Look for a base 4-2-5. They're going to have that nickel back, that hybrid guy who can play in the box or drop into coverage for the most part. But, Derek, like most defenses, they're going to be able to morph into a lot of different looks, but a 4-2-5 is going to be the base. So you hope there's some improvement made on that side of the ball. And like you said, I think there is that hope because of new staff and a new scheme that should be more effective. And I'll tell you what, offensively, Derek, the one spot that worries me is quarterback. I like Ryan Brown a lot as a person. I think he's got a nice skill set. I think he can run the football. He's big, he's tough, he's charismatic, he's a leader, he's well liked. He only has 2 career starts and not a big volume of experience. If he looks over his shoulder, there's even less experience behind him. So my point is, if Ryan Brown somehow struggles or gets hurt, what happens to this offense with Malachi Singleton or Bennett Meredith at the control? So, not to create problems that don't exist, but that's just something that's sort of been on my mind when I think about the offense is, yeah, things could go great with Ryan Brown, but I guess I always wonder what if he does struggle, because he still is a work in progress, especially as a passer. Can he bottle that performance in Champaign that we saw last year in the 50-49 overtime loss? We shall see. Team's going to game plan for him now too. So again, that's just something I've been mindful of. And, Purdue didn't go out and sign that big time transfer quarterback. So we'll see if their philosophy pays off or not. But again, I think Ryan Brown can do what they want, but he's going to have to develop. And I think he's going to have to stay healthy too.
Yeah. And I think can be a capable starter, but in a perfect world to me, Tom, Ryan Brown screams, hey, he's a really good backup. You know what I mean? He's a great, he can come in a pinch. Somebody gets injured. You need him for a series. You need him for a quarter. You need him for a one-off game, Saturday afternoon game in Evanston or something like that. Sure. Like, let's throw Ryan Brown out there. But, the grind of a Big Ten season for Ryan Brown, I think you'd like to have something there. But again, beggars can't be choosers because Purdue has kind of made their bet at quarterback, and now they're just going to have to frankly lie in it, right?
Yeah, I would have loved to have been in those meetings in the Kozic when they discussed the quarterback spot and how they wanted to handle it. Maybe they did go out to pursue somebody real big, and they didn't get him. Maybe they didn't have the money to spend $2 or $3 million on a quarterback. I don't know. But I would love to have been privy to those conversations on their philosophy toward handling that position this year.
Yeah, it's going to be of the storylines for next year. Certainly quarterback is going to be at the top of the list if it's not number one with a bullet, because so much obviously is going to depend on them getting production out of that spot, and something that they couldn't do last year. But in Hudson Card's defense, there wasn't much production elsewhere to kind of help the quarterback out, whoever it was, even when Brown came in as the spot starter as well. Tom, appreciate it as always, and make sure that you get to that answering machine voicemail and call back on your rotary phone there. I don't want to delay you any longer.
All right, my friend. My next call to you will be on the rotary phone, so be ready, my friend.
Yes, sir. Can't wait. Talk to you soon, Tom.
You bet, buddy. Take care.
That's our pal, Tom Dienhart, and that's great. A rotary phone. We had one we called it the TV room. So where I grew up in the house, we had 4 bedrooms, but I'm a triplet. So I had 2 sisters that were my same age. So I had my own boys' room, whatever. So I was lucky because I was the lone boy. I had my own room. My sisters shared a room until they were in high school. So when I was a kid, when rotary phones are still long, so this was like, like the early mid 90s, probably. We had a rotary phone up in the TV room, which was just basically the guest bedroom that had like a 27-inch TV in it, which at the time, a 27-inch TV was like, whoa, like that's the big TV that's in the house. It was like this wood-paneled Sony, 27-inch TV with giant speakers on the side. And I remember there was a little like end table that my mom had got at an antique shop or something like that. And there was a rotary phone on there. So when I was in 6th grade, so this was in 95, I used to call, there was a girl in my class that I liked named Hannah that I used to call, and I would dial her on the rotary phone. And you go through and dial it, and it was the receiver on the cord, the whole deal, hold it on your shoulder. Yeah, that's my rotary phone memory. Thought I'd share it with you. That was not what I was expecting to talk about here on Gold and Black Radio today, but you never know what we're going to talk about, I guess, on this show. Want to thank Tom Dienhart, and thanks to you for listening. And thanks to all of our terrific sponsors as well. A final shout out to Purdue Federal Credit Union, the official credit card for Purdue fans. East End Grill and Ripple and Company, 2 distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street in Lafayette. The Whitaker Inn for unparalleled comfort and cuisine. Visit Whitaker Inn. Tee times for the 2025 golf season at Sand Valley Resort now available. All you got to do is head to sandvalley.com and book your tee times today. Thanks so much to Sand Valley. And finally, the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research, which has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons on this podcast, and you can leave a positive review. Maybe you can please don't leave a negative one about us talking about rotary phones instead of Purdue football. Also, for our Gold and Black Radio listeners, if you are not a subscriber at goldandblack.com, use promo code PU1 at checkout when purchasing a monthly subscription, so we can get you through the summer, 2 months for $1 by using promo code PU1. New subscribers, goldandblack.com, June and July, 2 months for $1. Take advantage of that. And also, all of you, whether you're a subscriber or not, don't forget to subscribe to the goldandblack.com channel, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, enable alerts, new highlights, videos, content uploaded regularly, because we're always churning stuff out here at Gold and Black Radio. But until next week, I'm Derek Schultz. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time right here on Gold and Black Radio.